All right, so we're diving deep into the tabernacle again.
We are.
And this time we're in Exodus chapter 27.
Exodus 27.
And we are talking all about construction.
That's right.
So, we are getting the blueprints to this portable sanctuary.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's, like you said, blueprints.
Yeah.
This is straight from God to Moses.
Oh, yeah. This isn't just some, IKEA furniture instructions.
This is the real deal.
This is serious business here.
This is God's presence amongst the people.
So let's talk about two major pieces of this puzzle today.
Okay.
The altar and the courtyard.
Sounds good.
So the altar,
Yes.
This is where they made their sacrifices and offerings.
Uh-huh.
And picture this thing. It's over 7 feet tall.
It's massive.
That's taller than most basketball players.
It really is. And the thing that always gets me
Yeah.
is it's actually bigger than the Ark of the Covenant.
Wow.
The Ark of the Covenant, where God's presence was said to reside,
And this is twice as tall.
twice as tall.
So you're telling me the place of sacrifice was actually more important than the place where God's presence was supposed to be?
It really highlights how central the act of sacrifice was to their entire belief system.
Wow. Okay, so this altar, it's made of acacia wood and completely covered in bronze.
Oh, yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Each corner has a horn.
You got it.
What's the deal with the horns?
Well, think about horns.
Okay.
They represent strength and power,
Yeah.
divine protection even. And so you have that in the context of the altar.
Oh, so it's like the might of God?
Yeah, the might of God's presence.
Yes, power of the sacrifices.
Yeah, and it's a seriously complex thing.
It is.
We're talking about a bronze grill-like netting
Whoa.
suspended in the middle of this altar.
Okay.
And they made the altar in 2 parts to fit this netting in.
Why so complex?
Well, think about it. They had to move that thing.
Oh, yeah.
That netting probably helps with airflow to keep the fire burning.
That's true.
And to make it in 2 parts, you can pack it up.
And rebuild it.
You got it.
Portability was key.
Every detail mattered.
They even had special acacia wood poles covered in bronze to carry this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
So you walk out of this massive altar area,
Yeah.
and you're in this courtyard that surrounds the tabernacle.
Right.
Think of it like a fence made of finely woven linen tapestries.
Beautiful tapestries.
Like a giant tent hung on these posts all around.
150 feet long.
Whoa.
These linen tapestries all around you, it must have felt like another world.
And you know what? There's only one way in.
Is there?
One single entrance on the east side.
Really?
Marked by this huge, colorful 30-foot screen.
I love that.
It's like they're saying, this is the way to God, folks.
That single entry point really emphasizes the sacredness of the space within.
So another thing that stood out to me was the mix of materials they used.
Oh, yeah. What do we got?
Bronze sockets for the posts,
Okay.
silver hooks and rings for the tapestries, and then the linen tapestries themselves.
That's like a variety pack.
What's with the variety pack?
Well, you've got bronze, which is really durable. It provides the structure.
Yeah.
Silver, a precious metal, signifies purity and holiness.
Oh, yeah.
And linen is associated with cleanliness and purity.
It makes sense.
It really does.
So we've got this meticulously crafted altar in the center,
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by this grand courtyard. You can really sense the reverence and the care that went into creating this dedicated space for worship.
You can.
But hold on a sec.
What's up?
We can't forget about the menorah.
Oh, the menorah.
It's mentioned right here in chapter 27.
Yeah.
It says, this menorah, which was inside the tabernacle,
Okay.
but not in the innermost chamber,
Right.
had to be kept burning with pure olive oil all the time.
The ever-burning flame.
It's a detail that seems small,
It does.
but it's a big deal.
Ew.
Why is this detail about the menorah such a big deal?
Well, think about where it is.
Okay.
It's inside the tabernacle, but outside the Holy of Holies.
So it's like in between.
Yeah, it's in this in-between zone.
Not quite the most holy spot, but still within the sacred space.
It's like this bridge
Okay.
between the holy and the most holy,
Uh-huh.
and it's illuminating the path towards God's presence.
And the fact that it had to be kept burning constantly.
From evening until morning,
It's like God is always there.
it symbolizes God's unwavering faithfulness to his covenant,
Yeah.
his promise to always be with his people.
Even when things are dark.
Literally.
Love that imagery.
Yeah, it's a universal need for hope and guidance.
You know what else is interesting?
What's that?
It wasn't just any oil they could use.
No.
It had to be pure olive oil.
Right.
Why pure olive oil?
Olive oil represents purity, holiness, and even the Holy Spirit.
Okay, so this is not just about lighting up a room. This is about spiritual illumination.
Exactly.
Okay.
The menorah represents the light of God's truth and wisdom guiding the Israelites on their journey.
I'm starting to realize everything in this tabernacle is like a giant metaphor.
You're catching on.
From the courtyard to the altar to the menorah.
You got it.
Oh, yeah, and speaking of metaphors,
Yeah.
we were talking about that courtyard with its grand size and that single entrance.
Yeah, it's a VIP area.
It's like a VIP area where only the chosen few can enter.
Well, it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
The courtyard is a defined space separated from the world,
Okay.
and this separation highlights the distinction between the sacred and the profane.
Okay, so it's a visual reminder that there's a boundary between the ordinary and the holy.
You got it, a space where the Israelites could come face to face with God, but it also emphasized the need for ritual purity.
Which is why there's only that one entrance.
Exactly.
Like, it's a very exclusive doorway
It is.
to a divine encounter.
And those materials,
Yeah.
the bronze, the silver, the woven linen, each had deep symbolic meaning.
It's not just about function.
Right.
It's about symbolism.
Every little detail sends a message.
And that brings us back to the altar.
Yes.
We were talking about the horns.
Strength and divine protection.
Made of acacia wood and covered in bronze.
Yeah. What about that bronze?
What's so special about bronze? It seems like they used it everywhere.
Well, in the ancient world, bronze was often associated with judgment and purification.
And the altar is where they sought atonement for their sins.
Exactly.
So the bronze symbolizes the fiery judgment of God, but also the purifying power of the sacrifices.
It's like two sides of the same coin.
It really is.
Powerful image.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that grill-like netting inside. It's like a visual representation of the fire consuming the sacrifice.
And the fact that it was made in two parts, maybe that's emphasizing the separation,
It could be.
separating the earthly from the divine.
It's a possibility.
But even with all the symbolism,
Yeah.
the altar was still portable.
It
They
went.
had to carry this thing on their journeys.
Remember those poles?
Yeah, they thought of everything.
They did.
It's like this perfect blend of the spiritual and the practical.
It really is.
So the altar, with all of its symbolism, is really at the heart of the Israelites' relationship with God.
It is.
That's where they sought forgiveness.
Offered their sacrifices and basically came face to face with the divine.
Yeah, and the courtyard acts as a buffer zone,
Oh, yeah.
a space of preparation and transition between the everyday world and sacred realm of the tabernacle.
It's amazing how these seemingly simple structures can hold so much meaning and significance.
It is. But you know what? Before we get lost in the layers,
Okay.
let's pause here
Yeah.
and remind ourselves what this all means for you, our listener.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, so we were talking about that menorah and the instructions to keep it burning all the time.
Pure olive oil, too.
Yeah, pure olive oil. What's the deal with that?
You know, it might seem small, but it's actually huge.
Really?
Yeah, it's all about God's presence and that covenant with the Israelites.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, you got to think about where it is.
Okay, where is it?
Inside the tabernacle, but outside the Holy of Holies.
So not in the most holy spot,
Right.
but still in
It's like a bridge
a bridge.
between the holy and the most holy.
Okay, I kind of see it.
Yeah, illuminating the path towards God's presence.
And it had to be kept burning all the time.
Evening until morning.
So it's like God is always there.
Exactly. It's like God saying, hey, I'm not going anywhere.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah. Unwavering faithfulness to his covenant.
His promise to be with his people even when things get dark.
Literally.
Yeah, literally.
It speaks to that human need for hope.
Especially when we're facing the unknown.
Absolutely.
You know what else is interesting?
What's that?
It wasn't just any oil.
Nope. Had to be pure.
Pure olive oil.
Pure olive oil. Why do you think?
Well, olive oil in the Bible, I always think of like purity, holiness.
Even the Holy Spirit.
Okay, so this is not just about lighting up the room.
No, it's about spiritual illumination.
Yeah, like God's truth and wisdom guiding them.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the courtyard, we've got the altar, we've got this menorah. It's all symbolic.
It is. It all ties together.
Yeah, and speaking of metaphors,
Yes.
that courtyard,
The courtyard, what about it?
remember how big it was? And that single entrance.
One way, yes.
Yeah, like a VIP area only certain people can enter.
It's more than that.
What do you mean?
The courtyard is a defined space.
Okay.
It's separate from the world.
Uh-huh.
And that's highlighting this key theme,
What's that?
the separation between the sacred and the profane,
Okay, so the courtyard, it's like a visual reminder that there's a boundary,
between the ordinary and the holy.
and that's why there's only one entrance.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's like a very exclusive doorway to a divine encounter.
You got it. And remember all those materials?
Oh, yeah. The bronze,
You know,
silver.
woven linen.
Yeah, what about them?
They all had symbolic meaning.
So we see the function, but we got to look deeper.
Yeah, look at the symbolism.
Every detail is sending a message.
And that brings us back to the altar.
Okay, the altar.
The horns, strength, divine protection.
And it's made of acacia wood covered in bronze.
That bronze is important.
I know they use it everywhere, but why?
Well, bronze was often associated with the judgment and purification,
And the altar is where they made those sacrifices.
seeking atonement for their sins.
So the bronze symbolizes the fiery judgment of God.
But also the purifying power of sacrifice.
Wow, two sides of the same coin.
Powerful imagery, right? And then you see that grill-like netting inside.
Yeah.
Visual representation of the fire consuming the sacrifice.
And it was made in two parts for that netting.
Right.
Maybe that's emphasizing separation.
Could be separating the earthly from the divine.
But even with all of the symbolism,
Yeah.
it was still portable.
You had to be able to move it.
Remember those poles?
Oh, yeah.
The spiritual and the practical.
Perfectly blended.
Yeah, the altar, it's at the heart of their relationship with God.
It is.
Seeking forgiveness, offering sacrifices, coming face to face with the divine.
And that courtyard surrounds it, acts as a buffer.
Yeah, a buffer zone.
Between the everyday world and that sacred realm of the tabernacle.
It's amazing how much meaning and significance is packed into these structures.
It really is. But before we go any further, let's bring it back to our listener.
Okay, so we've been talking about all this symbolism.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean for us today?
Right. We don't exactly build portable sanctuaries anymore.
Yeah, no animal sacrifices.
So how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, how do we connect these ancient symbols with our modern lives?
Well, let's think about that courtyard.
Okay.
It was this space of preparation and transition, right?
Between the ordinary world and the sacred.
Exactly.
Don't we all create spaces like that in our lives?
I think so.
Yeah, like places where we step away from everything and connect with something bigger.
Like what kind of spaces?
Well, I don't know, maybe my yoga studio?
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
that quiet spot in my garden where I meditate?
Those intentional boundaries.
Yeah.
Those spaces where we quiet our minds.
And open ourselves up to something more?
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the altar, though?
The altar.
We're not making animal sacrifices anymore.
No, we're not.
But is there a modern equivalent?
To that idea of atonement,
Yeah, offering something up to a higher power.
well, think about the sacrifices we make in our own lives.
Okay, like what?
The things we give up, the challenges we face.
You mean like pushing ourselves to be better?
Exactly. Those are forms of sacrifice.
Okay.
Acknowledging our imperfections and striving for something more.
It's like those personal sacrifices are our offerings now.
You got it.
And the menorah,
That constant light.
yeah, a symbol of hope when things are tough.
More powerful than ever.
But where do we find that light when it feels like everything's going wrong?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
It is.
The menorah reminds us that the light is always there.
Even when we can't see it.
It might be in the kindness of strangers,
Okay.
the beauty of nature, or even in those quiet moments of reflection.
Like a beacon that guides us through the darkness.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the courtyard, the altar, and the menorah.
We have
We've connected them to our modern lives.
creating sacred spaces, making sacrifices.
And finding that inner light.
that guides us.
This has been a fascinating journey.
It has
It's amazing how these ancient stories still speak to us today.
timeless wisdom.
They really do offer timeless wisdom.
So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
I want you to think about what resonated most with you.
What stood out?
Yeah, maybe it's creating your own personal courtyard
A space for reflection.
or rethinking those sacrifices you make.
and how they help us grow.
And of course, remembering that even in the darkest of times,
That light is always there.
within reach.
This deep dive has been eye-opening.
I'm glad.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective on these stories.
That's what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Exodus chapter 27.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time when we uncover even more fascinating insights from the world of ancient texts.
Until then.
Keep searching for that light.